Right, well, I think we're going to get started. We are waiting for a couple more people to join us, but I think we're going to get started in the interim. So I would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to our last panel discussion of this series. My name is Sarah Hallett. I'm the director of the Meta Foundation, which is running this project. The overarching umbrella topic of the project is the problem with African contemporary art is ... question mark. Our project really is looking to reveal this statement as being flawed and inaccurate, and to reposition the so-called problem by reframing it through a process of interpretation and discussion and debate, which is one of the things that we are tackling in the series of panel discussions. The project really aims to reflect on our position within the global context and why it is for years that the continent as a whole has been left out of serious debate and consideration, regardless of our obvious talent and what we bring to the proverbial table. In recent years, there's been a lot of excitement about the so-called African moment, with many collectors and institutions rushing to collect work and join this moment. And I guess we're trying to, through these panel discussions, work out what has created this moment in the world and what does it mean for us and for the world. How do we protect ourselves from being taken advantage of? How do we find our own voice in this moment? How do we take a leadership role in this question? And I guess whether we're just being placated by the world and once again, you know, not really going to be taken seriously and being unconsidered in some ways. And whether projects like this and discussion and debate like this will reduce the likelihood of some of that happening. So in this panel discussion, the focus is the digital globalization of art. And for that, we have moderator Palesa Suthane, who is an independent curator and the founder of the Grand African Art Society. She is going to manage this panel today. And I would like to encourage any of our attendees, if you have any questions or answers, pop them into the Q&A. Otherwise, this session will be recorded and ultimately will end up on YouTube. So you're more than welcome to go ahead and watch it there. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Palesa.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining us for this discussion. Like Sarah said, my name is Palesa Suthane. I'm an independent curator and the founder of the Grand African Art Society. And today I will be having a very long discussion, nice discussion with Edward Zumile and Vivien Kohler, who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves in a moment. I just want to tell everyone what our topic is for today. The topic is the global digitization of art. And the questions that we are asking today is, how is social media reshaping access for artists and audiences? And is the democratization of access building a stronger voice for artists or invalidating them? So without further ado, I'm going to start with Edward. Edward, can you briefly introduce yourself to the public?
Hi, afternoon, everyone. My name, of course, is Edward Zumile. I've been a journalist for over 20 years, but I'm still young. I've worked for quite a number of publications, starting off with Suthane, that's about 1998, and I've since moved to a lot of other publications, either as a full-time staffer or as a freelance. I've written for Business Day, I've written for City Press, I've written for the Sunday Times, for the Star, for the Sunday Independent, but my area has always been in the arts. But currently, I am the editor of City Life Arts, which is a publication that focuses mainly on visual art and, of course, with other areas like theater and literature becoming part of the content mix. In short, that's who I am.
Thank you so much for joining us, Edward, for this discussion. Vivien, can you please introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Vivien Kohler. visual artist, mixed media artist, originally from Cape Town. Living out in Centurion at the moment with my beautiful family, and I currently have a studio at August House. Yes.
Thank you for joining us, Vivien. Now, all three of us heard the topic that we are discussing today, and I had to do a bit of research on this topic. This is my area of focus when I work with the Grand African Art Society, social media, and the access, the global access that it's given artists and audiences into the contemporary art world here in Africa. My first question is, in one way or another, we've watched the status quo shift from the gallery to the artist. We've seen it happening before the likes of Instagram blew up and Facebook as well. I want to direct this first to Edward. As a journalist, Edward, when did you notice a shift in the dynamics in the art world?
Yeah, that's quite interesting, Palesa. But maybe before I go in there, maybe let me start with what is art actually, because that's very important. It's always grapple with this idea. And there are always various ways of describing what art is. And I think this is important because we need to understand the role that art plays, or what we call art plays in society and in human development. And unless we understand that, it becomes very difficult to even navigate other aspects of art. I would really, I won't be boring to try and go into the definition of what art is. But I think for the sake of this conversation, we perhaps would have to look at what an artist called Keith Haring explained in 1985 in an interview. I quote, this is what he said: "I don't think art is propaganda. It should be something that liberates the soul, provokes the imagination, and encourages people to go further. It celebrates humanity instead of manipulating it." And then close quote. But then in another interview that he had in 1984, this is what he said, that was in Flesh Art. And this, I think, for me, gave more flesh to what he said earlier. He says, art lives through the imagination of the people who are seeing it. Without that conduct, there's no art. And I think that ties into this question now. In as much as, artists would be creating what they call art, without people seeing it, without people's imagination being kind of provoked, then it's not art. So what it means is that which they call art must be seen somewhere, must be viewed somewhere, on a certain platform, somewhere, by somebody who may or may not like it. So what has happened is, so there is a need for the artists to somehow display their work somewhere. It could be a gallery, it could be, any other space. So what we have seen over the years is that, traditional galleries were the one that had monopoly on showing art, or what we call art, what the artists create, and of course for business purposes. But I think with the arrival of new technologies now, our spaces have been opened up. And this has been a steady progression. It didn't happen overnight. I would say that the shift, to answer the question, for me, I think I started observing that shift maybe in the past 10 years, where certain artists say, I don't have to be signed to a gallery because I can sell my artwork using other platforms and alternatives. And then it builds up. And the thing now, it's really the thing. Even if you are new, at least you have some kind of platform where people can view it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Vivien, as an artist, what made you realize that social media can be used as a tool for business?
For me, I think at the point where I joined Facebook, and that like button is a beautiful thing. It's quite an addictive thing, getting likes on your posts and your artwork that you post. But for me, I discovered that when galleries started liking the work as well, when galleries and gallerists and collectors and curators started hitting that like button as well. Because social platforms is all about visibility.
Yes.
So it's a different way of accessing visibility. And when it comes to selling your work, getting into galleries and so forth, the age-old game, it's all about visibility. Yes.
I think for me, I started noticing a shift in the dynamics when you'd constantly hear gallerists whisper in the corners that artists are selling their works from the studio. And
Yes.
the big question is, how do they share these works? That was the big question. How are they getting the catalogs out to the clients? How are they getting the clients to visit them in their studios? And social media played a really big part in that. And Facebook specifically, you know, because artists would share what it is that they are creating, and also the art buyers would always ask when they get to the gallery that what's the name of the artist, because they would want to find them on social media. So I think that's when I first noticed the shift in the dynamics in the art world. And as for social media being a tool for business, I must say that I started noticing the prominence of social media about 5 years ago on Instagram, and how much of a surge there was to have artists work on social media. Everybody was sharing, everybody was posting. And at the beginning, there was always problems around how art is being shared, because I felt like at the time, a lot of the people who were sharing art were a bit of celebrities, and it was mostly used as like a backdrop or wallpaper. And we would always prompt like, who's the artist? Who's the artist? And that started gaining momentum about 5 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. One of the problems I identified with contemporary African art is that the public cannot discern the difference between African art and contemporary African art. Edward, do you think we are doing enough to educate the online audiences about African art and its differences to contemporary African art?
I think it's important for us to, first of all, define what is it that we call African art and what is it that we call contemporary art. For me, I would regard African art as, you know, the classical African art that was produced many years ago. Artists have always been there, whether there was a formal training or not. In society, there was always some form of artistic activity, including the visual art, whether it was somebody carving, it was whatever it was. But what we can say in terms of that African art is that mainly it was for functional purposes, and as well as for ritualistic purposes.
Yes.
Functional, it could be maybe a piece of a chair where, you know, a king would sit, this is for the king, and you know, that kind of thing. Functional, it could be in a form of even pottery. I mean, like today you call it ceramics. They used to do that, you know, they could store water, they could do all these things. I mean, if you want to see a lot of that African art, for instance, let's say Art Museum has got a lot of that, and the Standard Bank collection has got a lot of that. That is for me African art. But then when it comes to contemporary art, we're really talking about the art of the now.
Yes.
Art that artists are producing today, and which deal with a lot of whole range of issues in society, contemporary issues in terms of you know, looking at politics, looking at things like gender-based violence, a number of things that we have, the social ills, and also the good things that happen in society, if there are any. So it is the art of now, and it is art that is dealing with today's issues. And for me, this is how I would differentiate between that other African art and this art. And this is not to say this contemporary art that we have now is better than that other art or the other way around. No. Even though we know in terms of the history of African art, it has always been disregarded and looked down upon as if it's not important. But believe me, when you go back to those artworks, you can actually see that there is a lot that you can learn. There is a lot that you can connect with. So these are two different art forms, but it doesn't mean it depends on what you like as a human being. I mean, I've had a lot of people would say to me, you know what, I want like African art. You know, I don't like the art that they're producing now. You know, I want that African art, you know. Whereas others, you know, would love the art that deals with issues that we see every day, you know, contemporary issues that we grapple with. We need clarity about, and artists come in and, you know, they play that position. So for me, I think, are we playing an important role in terms of differentiating? I think we could do more. And also because what is popular now is the contemporary art. In terms of African art, the classical art, it's not really something that we see in exhibitions, but if you want to see that, maybe the right place is to go to a museum. You know, museums have a lot of that, and so they play a role in terms of education and stuff like that, just to tell us where we come from and how the societies at that time were configured. So it's important, but yeah, so we could play a more important role in terms of encouraging people to go to museums, to see what we call African art as compared to contemporary art in galleries and art fairs and stuff like that. Yeah.
I like that you're speaking about contemporary art. How do you feel that we've been saying contemporary African art instead of saying contemporary art made in Africa?
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I think we should say contemporary art in Africa. In the past few years, increasingly, a lot of people were questioning that idea of why saying, you know, contemporary African contemporary art, where are we differentiating it from the global art, for instance? It's the same thing with certain people saying, for instance, in terms of books, if you are a writer in Africa, they'll say an African writer. And I remember one famous novelist, you know, is my favorite, Dambuzo Marechera, and it's no, I'm not an African writer. Anybody who calls themselves an African writer, he used the F word. I don't want to repeat that word. But basically, yeah, some people really get offended because African art that is produced from Africa is part of a global art movement.
Yes.
It's not, why are we differentiating it? So
it's not
African
separate,
art
yes.
and other art is one.
Yes.
I agree because that was, when I started researching this topic, that was some of the conversations I had with different artists who were like, but why are we saying that it's contemporary African art? Because like Edward said, African art relates to very ritualistic forms of art, and they serve a functional purpose when they are created. Whereas right now, we have artists who are contemporary artists. The only difference is that they are creating contemporary art in Africa. So why are we attributing them to being contemporary African artists when their work is not necessarily in relation to the ritualistic forms of the past African art that we've seen? And this leads me then to my next question. During these conversations with Vivien, the group of artists I was with, they argued that contemporary African art is romanticized to accommodate the Western European gaze and its audiences. My first question is, do you agree or disagree with this statement, and why?
Oh wow, that's quite a loaded question, actually. Yeah, I mean, there's so much history and context to that question. It's not an easy question to answer because each artist is an individual, and you can't really give a blanket answer, a generalized answer to that. In some cases, there are artists who they lean more to the commodification side of art.
Yes.
And in that way, they are swayed by what they see in social media, what they see in different trends internationally. There was an artist called Andrea Crespo who did an interview in 2018 for Vulture magazine, and she said, the reward systems in social media were influencing my decisions while making art. I would think about what people would think based off of likes and comments. And I think the contemporary artists, I think we all grapple with this issue. We're all influenced by external influences, both positive and negative. So yes, in a way, I think it depends on the artist. If you are an artist who's more concerned about your own personal studio practice and your own voice, you won't be swayed as easily as someone who purely sees art as a commodity and as a way of earning a living, which is important. But art is not a commodity only. Its initial standpoint, its initial genesis doesn't stem from commodity. It stems from an inner voice. It stems from the artist's heart. It stems from that personal place. Because most of the time when you're working as an artist, you're working in isolation in your studio. And what comes out on the canvas or whatever medium you're using, it comes from a deeply personal place. And that in itself cannot be commodified, even though contemporary art tries to do that. So, yeah, yeah.
I will be honest, I do agree with the statement, because I feel that it also rings true to how far an artist is with their career. The more established you are, the less likely you are to fit into this box where you are creating art as a commodity, but you start creating art as a form of expression, and becomes, like you said, very deeply personal. But for a very large group of artists, it is a commodity. It is a way of life. They are creating to sell, and they are heavily influenced by the Western European gaze, because it has to, even with the gallery system, it has to look visually appealing in such a way that I feel when white collectors come in, they feel comfortable. They don't feel confronted. They don't feel all the emotions of looking at something that you kind of have to argue with or grapple with as an individual. So I do agree with the statement of that African artists are romanticizing African art to the Western European gaze.
Yeah, I think unfortunately that's been the history of African art. From Picasso to Gauguin, it's always been commodified, it's always been romanticized. And then, I mean, for me, something key that Edward said earlier is it comes down to the word purpose. You know, what's the purpose of that art? In terms of traditional African art, the purpose of that art was mostly decoration or religious practices, whereas our current contemporary African art, or I should say contemporary art, the purpose is very different, you know. So, but the thing is, we're still living in that place where the Western gaze is restricting what our art is, what our contemporary art is. It's still trying to hold on to the past and relegate our traditional culture to the curio, you know, to the craft. Whereas those areas of our art, it's highly detailed, it's highly historied. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing to still be in that position where the Western gaze is quite limited and it's quite ignorant. An example of that is when I had my last solo in London. One of the collectors came through and took me aside and asked me, "How did you get here?" So it took me aback because at that point it was 2018. And I had to say, I came on an airplane, you know, and then they were taken back. Like, then they asked me, "But don't you have like lions and things running around in your backyard?" And this is 2018. Wow. So, I mean, not to disrespect anyone in terms of Westernization, but this is just an example of where we still live. So in those terms, the Western gaze, there still needs to be a lot of educating that needs to happen, and we as African artists, we need to be the forerunners of that education.
Definitely. Edward, I wanted to ask you specifically, do you think that artists are producing work that reflects Africa?
Yes, they are, especially if we're talking about contemporary artists now, contemporary artists from Africa. They do a lot because, you know, the issues that are we are confronting Africa now are different from perhaps what the Western world conceives the issues. I mean, they are here, so they produce work within the context of the continent and the problems and the social issues, whether it's politics, whether it's gender-based violence. We see a lot of that actually from visual artists. These are the things that they observe, that they see in communities, that they grapple with, and so I think yes, to that extent, yes, they are. These are not necessarily the issues that perhaps the Western world thinks are the main issues, but you know, they are here and they see them, and they, you know, they put their stamp on those issues, and yeah, that's how I see it.
The question that I was asking stemmed from, like I said, a conversation where artists were saying that they create art because they have to sell, but when they look at the art that they've been creating over the years, it's not necessarily what they would have liked to create.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I think in terms of that, yes, we have a lot of artists, general artists. When they for you to become an artist, it's not something light. Number one, you know, you're likely not to be rich to become a millionaire.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, they know very well that, you know, I'm likely to become a millionaire. Not that you want it, sometimes you can. But so it's something deep inside you. It's something that is in you, something that we ordinary people can't explain. It's only you who knows. And then you decide, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to express myself. This is how I see the world. And this is how I'm going to interpret the world around me. And often when they start off as young artists, when they are young, when they start from that point. And then what then happens in some cases is that, you know, the market, what we call the market, I'm talking about the collectors, the people who buy. I mean, using the Western gaze in this sense, who probably look and say, hey, but listen, man, this is beautiful, it's pretty, but why don't you, for instance, paint a picture of people who are struggling and hungry and that kind of thing, you know, because that's what we understand Africa to be. And they're like, no, but that's not what I do. I've got, you know, I look at it differently. So when they are young, yes, and then they say, but we pay money. Basically, that's what happens. I'm simplifying it, but that's what happens. And then when you create certain kind of artworks, then they start buying, and money comes in, because money is coming in, you sort of get derailed from your original mission. And start thinking like, hey, man, I can buy a car, I can do this, you know, so this is the kind of work that I must create. But I must say, in the long term, it doesn't help the artist, because you still have to, at some stage, you will find that you still need to go back and find that inner voice that drove you in the direction of creating artworks. And sometimes you never find it again. You get lost forever, you know, unfortunately. To reconnect with that inner voice is very difficult, especially when you have moved so far, a long distance away from that inner voice. That is the danger that is there. Because at some stage, you reach that point where you really need to refine yourself. The essence of who you are is that original innocent artist that was not influenced by the market. That is the danger.
It is.
It's very true.
We see the danger now because the internet is saturated with images of contemporary African artworks that look similar to one another. And so much so that the public starts saying things like, oh, this artist is copying another artist. Even artists themselves struggle with this saturation of images, where they look at another artist and like, oh, but this looks similar to this other artist's work. Now we saw it start with like the very full portrait a few years ago, and those have quite taken over social media, you know. And now moving on to a new trend, which is the blackened skin. We're seeing different artists picking up on the trend of Kerry James Marshall.
Yeah.
My question to you, Vivien, is do you think artists follow trends?
I think artists have always followed trends. That it's actually coming back to what Edward had just now said about when money comes into play.
Yes.
That money changes the conversation. Because the reality is that artists do need to make a living as everyone else, and so when that artist sort of stumbles upon an artwork, or in their own personal capacity, when they sort of stumble upon a line of artwork that starts to sell, that's what they follow, because it's now bringing in money, it's bringing in an income, which is very important and necessary for life. But then there are also artists, and again, this depends on the artist. There are artists who will consciously follow a trend in order to make a living. I don't know why. That depends on the artist. Maybe they haven't found their own personal voice yet, and who knows what their personal backgrounds and circumstances are. But everyone has their own reasons.
Yeah, I agree with Vivien there, but you must also point out the fact that it depends what is the reason for them to copy each other. Is it because what happens in terms of art, every generation has got a group of artists that are operating in a particular time. So there's likely to be influence there in terms of styles and everything, because you don't exist in isolation from the others.
Completely.
If that is the case, then I don't think it's a bad thing to be influenced, but not really to copy. I think copying is just a bit too strong. But if you are influenced, and especially when you are still young and you're still trying to find your own voice, and then obviously the styles that are around you, the artistic styles that are around you, somehow will find their way into your art practice. If that happens, I think that's fine, that's natural, but not because so and so is selling and this is the kind of artwork that he's doing, and therefore I'm gonna do the same so that I can
sell a reality, though,
and buy a BMW. That is totally
That's see, the thing is, our current culture, we've gone from the artist who works purely in the studio to now the celebrity artist. And many of the younger artists, that is the goal, to become that celebrity artist and to wear all those name brands and, like you said, drive that BMW. So that becomes the goal, and the quick way to get there is to copy. Like you said earlier, in the arts, there's a long tradition of being influenced, and every single artist is influenced by other artists. But now with our current get-rich-quick culture, unfortunately, that is reality. But I must say as well that it's not only artists who follow trends, it's the galleries and the collectors as well follow the trends. And they are the ones who are the gatekeepers. They are the ones sometimes who also steer artists into these directions of producing sort of trendy work that's trending, work that is current. Yeah.
Sure. Now we have a question about, I'm just gonna do the question here.
Sure.
The question comes from Gail Wilson, and she says, there seems to be a saturation of art depicting children. This has been influenced by some well-known artists who have been doing this for some time and have become celebrity artists. What are your thoughts on this, Edward?
Yeah, I don't want to guess who this person is talking about, but I think, that happens a lot. But also, I think we must also understand that art that depicts children, we all love children. If you're a normal human being, you love children, you love them. So it's likely, obviously, to have certain traction. It's unfortunate when somebody who has been dedicated to this kind of artwork and sort of developed this visual language in that area for over years, perfected it, and then eventually the results connect with the market, and now everybody wants to be that artist. I think that is, it goes back to what we were discussing earlier on, to say, that is problematic, because that's not you as an artist. That's not your voice. Find your voice. Just find your space within the visual art sector, and you will find it. That's not the only way you can be noticed. Do what you love most, what is deep inside you, and eventually the results will be okay, if not very good.
Okay.
Sorry, may I interject? I don't think the paintings of children are new. I mean, I remember back in days, my early days, my art career in Cape Town, there were so many of us doing portraits and paintings of children. So it's not a new thing. However, that kind of celebrity artists made it popular. It became a commodity now. It became an avenue of revenue. So it was, like Edward was saying, it was just a point where that one artist connected with the market, that one name connected with the market, and it opened up doors for others, but not to copy though. Yeah.
I want to just share my thoughts with Gail about the saturation of artworks with children. I think it's very problematic because it has quite a voyeuristic element to it. I don't know why, but I just don't connect with paintings of little children, because it's not done in an authentic style where the artist is just imagining this child. These are actual photographs of children they know, or children that are around them, and you're painting them and you're just exposing them to the world, and then again, there's questions of the actual child's consent. Do they agree to be part of this iconography in the form of a painting? Have you asked their permission? Could you not wait till they were old enough? Are they comfortable? What are they going to say once they're old enough and see their portrait on some celebrity's wall? I don't want to say who, but I'm not comfortable with it. And, no.
Sorry, doesn't also come down to the politicizing of the black face, especially now at this point in time with the Black Lives Matter movement, where the black adult is seen as someone to fear, whereas the black child is innocent and won't give you problems. That's a kind of a crude way to say it, but for me, it's also about the point in time in our history with the BLM movement and all of that, the politicizing of the blackface.
I'm going to move on. One of the questions of this panel discussion is based on is the democratization of access building a stronger voice for African artists or invalidating them? What are your thoughts? I'll start with you, Vivien.
Yes, for me it's a positive, because it's about visibility, and it's about equality and equity. It's about control of access. It's about all of us being on equal footing and an equal platform. So for me, I tend to be an optimist, and I see it as a positive. I mean, no doubt there are cons to it, but I definitely see it as a positive, allowing access to a sense of a reality within that is found on our continent that is not usually been able to be seen without social media, without sort of the eye on the ground, the camera on the ground, the camera being in our own hands. I definitely think it's aided Africa to get its voice out there.
Edward?
Yeah, I think it's a positive thing, quite honestly, because giving more access to platforms, to artists. It's all about visibility, like Vivien said. It's all about that definition that was I read, keep hearing earlier on, to say, you go to whatever you're creating must reach some audience somewhere. So the more platforms they are there, the better for artists, and the ease of accessibility is even better. So social media, the digital world, is playing a very crucial role in terms of that. And however, I think in order for one to use those platforms effectively, they need to think out very carefully and sort of curate the kind of information they need to send out there, and also understand that you know, what you normally send out there, you never get it back in some states.
Yeah.
It's gone, and it can build you. It can also kind of destroy or stand your growth. So you need to be careful. Let me not say careful. You need to think very careful about what kind of content you want to send out there. Don't put up works that are half finished unless you are telling us that you're still waiting on this. But you never get it back, because then you know, we think, oh, so that's it, you know, that's his work, and so those kind of things, you know, those things that look like they're not important are really very important in terms of how do you curate the information that you send out using these platforms. There's a plethora of them. Anybody can just create their own platform, and that is why. And people often they think, okay, they can cut out the gallery. You know, to be honest, to be fair to gallery, they play a very important role in terms of shaping the career of the artist. Sometimes in the wrong direction, yes, but in a lot of cases, because you know, they are there to make money out of you, so they make sure that they look after you in terms of those kind of things that I've just said, the kind of information that you send out, and you know, so they look after that. So if you are going to be on your own, if you're going to do it yourself, and I wouldn't actually advise artists to do it themselves. They need to work with somebody who knows their art practice, who understand them, who sort of are dealing with that while they do what they know best, which is to create the artworks. So that person is able to say, okay, because at the end of the day, somebody needs to do the work that the gallery are doing. The galleries are doing. Because you can't just say, because now I don't need a gallery, I can do it myself. You probably don't have the skill that the galleries have, you know? So get somebody to do it. Get a curator who understands your art practice, and say, okay, this is what we're going to do this week. Next week, we're going to do this. This is what we're sending out, and that kind of thing, you know? So I would advise that people must use these platforms, yes, but they must use them in an efficient and professional manner.
Not just like pray and just share anything and everything. And I think that it is a positive for artists who have carefully curated what they are putting out into the world. So I do think it's a positive for them. One of the ways that social media has reshaped access for audiences and artists is exposing both to viral culture. Artists post pictures of celebrities in their artwork or standing next to their artwork, and somehow this advances their careers. To what extent, this is my question, to what extent is the infiltration of pop culture beneficial to the African art industry?
I'll go for this one. Yeah, I think that's very interesting, what you've just brought up now. You know, yes, it's very important, and I guess it's connected to the previous question as well. It's very important that you must market yourself, you must do all these sort of things. But you know, let me look at the positive side of things, for instance. I'm sure a lot of people will remember when it comes to celebrities and artworks, for instance. I'm sure many people will remember a few years ago when a famous artist's artwork was on an international magazine, on Time magazine. And, you know, after that, we have seen a lot of celebrities, especially from the US, whenever they came here, they've always asked for his work, to say, you know, where is he? Because they've seen him there. And we've seen that it has helped in terms of pushing forward his career. And that was very smart. Since then, he has been on other platforms. And in fact, when I speak, even in this country now, when I speak to some people that I know who are so-called celebrities, some are friends and stuff like that. I'm like, hey, but do you collect art? You know, I'm talking about people who are not necessarily visual artists, people who are perhaps on TV and stuff like that. When I do my interviews, sometimes they're like, yeah, you know, and they always want to say, no. Yes, I think I must collect, but I must collect works from that particular artist because that's the one that they know. But I'm like, yes, that's great. But also there are others, you know, there are others there who are doing great work that probably are not associated with any celebrity, but they're doing great work. So sometimes, yes, it helps. Sometimes it helps to associate yourself with some sort of celebrity status in order for you to be more accessible to that extent, but not for the sake of it. I must add, not for the sake of it. You know, you need to be careful still, you know, because it might not work. It might actually not work. Yeah, that's all I can say.
Do you have anything to add?
Yes, I think we're now delving into the realm of the business of art, the business side of art. And we live in a culture of validation. We live in a culture of commodification and the brand. We live in influencer culture. I mean, that's kind of business 101 these days. So I'm not surprised by that at all. Talking in terms of global culture, versus like what we were saying earlier about African contemporary art, or is it just contemporary art? So in those terms about global culture, I'm not surprised that this is now the way that business is being done. It's not, I don't think it's wrong, as long as that individual is not relying on that only, and they're actually sticking to the guns and making really good art, because that art is about longevity. It's not about the quick fix or the quick sell. It's not about the limited edition drop, like with the latest Nikes that come, you know, and then there's just a limited edition. That's not what art is. Art is soul, art as heart. So soul and heart, they're incredibly valuable. They are priceless, and that shouldn't be sold for a pittance.
I agree, Vivien, because what I have been missing is that soul that comes with popular culture, the popularization of art, where, you know, there's longevity to it. And also, social media has gotten to a point where you never know what's real and what isn't, because an artist can bump into a celebrity and take a photo, and just by merely posting that picture, we already assume that the celebrity is investing in the artist, which brings me to something else I wanted to add to what Edward was saying about collectors. The art collector now has changed completely. I don't think personally we have art collectors anymore. I do think we have decorators instead of art collectors, because in the past, an art collector is somebody who actively collects your work, Vivien. And by actively collecting your work, you can go to them and say, I want to develop this body of work, and I don't have the funds for it. As my collector, can you be my benefactor? You know, that's not happening anymore. We're seeing decorators, they're collecting because it's cool. They're collecting because those artists, like you said, Edward, is known, has been seen on this publication and with that celebrity. But the fact that they've been called collectors also is a bit problematic, because when the artists or the young artists need the funds to create a body of work, these people are absent. You know, they only come at the end where they'll either buy an artwork, sometimes they won't, and they really don't understand what being a collector is. And so I just wanted to add that to what you were saying, Edward. I really don't think we have collectors anymore. I do think we have decorators who stand next to art because it's cool.
I agree with you, Palesa, there. We don't have a collector system. Well, we have some collectors. We have some collectors, but but increasingly we're having a certain type of collector that is starting to emerge within the South African artist space. And that is the kind of collector that you've just described. I don't want to use that word decorators.
I know,
because
right?
actually we should encourage them. I think we should encourage them, actually. We should say, because one of the biggest problems that we have in terms of is the culture of collecting art. For a number of people, they simply don't have that culture. And I think we need to go in that direction and really, really encourage them. Even let them all come, decorators and collectors. Let them, the more they are there, the better for the art industry. So it's a journey. So we need to, later on, I'm sure, such people will then understand the value of art beyond just decoration. Through that process, because that's how we learn, all of us. We learn from we start from point A and point B, and then we start saying, actually, there's more value in the artwork that I have on my wall than just to look at them. So that my friends, when they come in here, they can see about this and this, which is okay. I mean, at the end of the day, it's fine. You've collected, you pay the artist, it's okay. But I think an education process will unfold as these people start buying different, collecting from different artists. They'll start to understand the different styles and the issues that these artists deal with. And we need to encourage them, because we have, particularly, I must say that we have a big black middle class in this country that have money now. I'm not saying they're very rich, but they've got money. They buy expensive cars, all these other things. But they haven't yet transitioned into buying other things than those other very materialistic things like cars. And not because they wouldn't want to, but because there isn't much kind of understanding the value of art in those circles. That is where the problem is. So we need more of them. We should not condemn ones that are collecting for decoration. We should embrace them. Because eventually that's how you develop a market. That's how you develop a market. Even the very same, today's decorator is tomorrow's collector.
Definitely. Definitely. Now I'm nearing the end of this panel discussion, and I have a few more questions. Technology in the art industry. You know, it's a big thing. We've just started adopting to virtual reality, virtual galleries with 3D tours and virtual reality installation. And now comes the new big baby, I guess, called non-fungible tokens, NFTs. Do you guys think that the African art industry is ready for NFTs, seeing as we are such late adopters of technology?
We better be ready, because I'll tell you, we're not going to reverse this process. This process will be there. And the fact that we're even having this discussion virtual like this, it shows the advantages that technology has. This is something that we can't avoid. We just have to keep on embracing the new technology and try to be, to take the one that works best for us. This process is not going to go back. And now, because of the pandemic, you know, this pandemic that we have at the moment, we can't meet in big numbers at one place in case we infect each other. So virtual galleries become very, very crucial and critical in terms of marketing artworks. Virtual art fairs become critical in terms of making sure that the business of art continues, irrespective of this, the presence of the virus that is lingering in the air, because you can literally buy your artworks from home, you know. You can travel in the gallery, you know, while you're at home, using even your phone. I mean, that's amazing. For me, I think that's the future. That's the future that we need to embrace. I can tell you now, even when this danger that we have now, the coronavirus, is long vanished in the dustbin of history, we are not going to do business the same way.
Yes.
It's likely to make a hybrid kind of doing business, virtual and also in the physical. So yeah, that thing, I think what we are doing now is something that was coming, but it has been quickened. The pace has been quickened by the virus. So, and I think this is the future.
Definitely. Vivien, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I mean, we all know that business is constantly evolving, and if we're going to survive, we need to evolve along with business. But in terms of NFTs and art, I'm quite wary, to be honest. I find it quite dangerous, and especially in terms of African art and our particular voice. I believe that we have a really pertinent voice. We have a unique voice as Africa. We have an incredibly important voice. So for me, in terms of the NFTs, I genuinely feel if it doesn't change from what it currently is, we're going to lose that voice. We're going to lose the important things we have to say. Because for me, I've got a limited understanding of NFTs, but what I've noticed is the reality and the heart and the soul of the products that are being sold. It's not about the product at all. It's just about commodity. It's just about transfer of funds.
Yeah.
So for me, in those terms, an NFT and art, I'm scared of that thing. I think if it doesn't change from pure commodity, if it doesn't change from pure just the moving of funds, the heart of our art, the heart of our voice, the heart of our culture, it's genuinely going to be lost, in my opinion. Yeah.
Wow, it's an interesting perspective, because I personally feel that the African art industry is definitely ready for the NFTs, because we are moving into an age where, you know, art is becoming more digital, and also the NFTs speak to how we take care of the provenance of the artist. So having an artist earn royalties from the artwork that was sold and that is being shared across social media, which, you know, has the potential to blow up and be used and reused. I mean, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, there was an artist whose artwork was taken and used for t-shirts, you know, absolutely wild. And he only found out about it because people started sharing these t-shirts, but he had never received any royalty or given any of his permission for that to be done, you know. So I do think personally, we should move into, well, artists should definitely explore the NFT space. Like you're saying that you are wary of it because you don't have as much information on it. Yes. I think it is, education plays a really big role moving forward as far as technology is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, at its current state, it's it needs to evolve. It needs to change. It needs to grow up. You know, it needs to mature.
It does.
Business, like I said, business is going to evolve, and we need to move with it. But there also needs to come. There needs to be a level of maturity to business as well. It can't just be about specifically the business of art. It can't just be about making that money. You know. It's coming back to the collector base, the collector versus the decorator. It's about that understanding what is art.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of art? Is it just a pretty picture on the wall? Then sure. If that's your aim, then sure, go for it. Yeah. But then if you are going to collect and buy work, in terms of understanding the historical pertinence of that work, or the historical value of that work, then it's something else, you know. Then it must be cherished.
I have a question here again from Gail Wilson, who says, don't you think if the better known galleries allowed possible once or twice a year lesser known artists to exhibit, that would give the lesser known artists, great artists, a lift off in public recognition, such as that Maka did towards the end of last year?
Yeah, with the home exhibition. Yeah. That was quite cool.
Yeah.
I like that initiative that they did. It did allow access to an institution that is held with esteem.
Yes.
I don't think every gallery is able to do that, because we need to understand that the gallery is a business and it needs income to survive. It is a business at its core. As wonderful as an idea as that is, it'd be awesome if every gallery could do that, but realistically, no, not every gallery can do that. I wish that would happen more often, to be honest. I think younger artists would progress in their careers a lot further. They'd be introduced to their galleries, collectors sooner. They'd get advice, career advice sooner. It's a great idea, but the business of art sometimes doesn't allow.
I feel, Gail, it does happen, but it happens through initiatives. So it happens through special projects, like if a gallery is collaborating with, for example, the Blessing Ngobeni Art Prize allows for this opportunity, where they have an art auction with Aspire Art Auction, and they also have an exhibition for their prize winner with Everard Reed. So there are those opportunities, but it is very much focused around the gallery's vision and how they'd like to present themselves as a business. So it doesn't just happen. Yeah.
And there are galleries that do competitions as well. That's how I got into the gallery system. I entered a competition that was run by a gallery. So in like you're saying, it's done through initiatives. That's one way that galleries do employ initiatives to access different younger artists as well.
Okay, so I'm reaching the end of the panel discussion. I have one last question for you both. What would you like to see contemporary artists do more of in the digital sphere that is not happening right now moving forward? I'll start with you, Edward.
Yeah, maybe before I go to that question, when you spoke about the previous question, and I think galleries could play an important an important role if they have what they call project spaces. I remember there was one gallery in Melbourne years ago called God Art Gallery. God Art Gallery had the main gallery, which was a house, and I think the cottage was being used as a project space. This is where young artists would have would exhibit their stuff there. And I remember at that time I met Lawrence Lamuna, and I met also Mary Spande there. Because they were exhibiting in the project space, not in the main gallery. And this is where they really started. And, I saw their works there, and it's interesting because that's how they were introduced to really collectors from there.
Yeah.
So if I think galleries could do that and create kind of not really like putting them in the main gallery because they need to make money with well-known artists there, but some kind of initiatives that they have from time to time. And I'll leave the last question to Vivien.
Vivien?
Answer that question.
For me, it's simple. It's just to take back the power and lead the conversation in terms of the African identity. Because Africa, it's so diverse. In just specifically in terms of race, just at one point, just in terms of race, there's so many different Africans in terms of races. People who are white who are African, Black African, myself, colored African, Indian African, and that needs to be delved into, and that needs to be expounded upon. Africa is not one-dimensional. So in those terms, it would be great to see us as artists using those platforms in those ways to speak of the reality of who we are and what we live with, and the true taste of our soil.
Yeah. For me, I definitely I would love to see more organization within our industry. We have so many voices, young voices coming up, but we are yet to have a collective, a collective voice where we're all speaking, I'd say, the same language, or we're all delivering the same message at the same time. I would love to see artists collaborate more. with each other instead of being so much more individualistic and operating or creating in silos. I'd love to see people conversating about the similar topics that we are having right now, and to see more discussion within the art industry, because that's how we move forward, and that's how we come up with answers and cultivate our industry a bit more. So yeah, for me, that's what I want to see going forward, and I'm hoping that through the Grand African Art Society and foundations like the Meta Foundation, we can do that. We can do such things. So yeah, that brings me to the end of our panel discussion. Thank you both so much for joining me. It has been lovely. Thank you so much, Vivien Kohler. Thank you, Edward.
Thanks very much, Palesa.
It has been wonderful, and I hope that from these discussions, more and more exhibitions and talks can come out of it. So yeah, thank you so much, and have a lovely week. Bye-bye. Going forward.
Thanks, you too, eh?
Bye. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you to Gail Wilson for sending us all her questions. Thank you to the Meta Foundation. Thank you to the National Arts Council and to Studio Liminal. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our attendees. And again, it will be up on YouTube for anyone who's missed anything. But otherwise,
thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.